Lisa Monroe wanted distance. Melanie Cross wanted devotion. Only one of them would get what she wanted. In the quiet town of Hazelwood, their names were once just two faces in a yearbook, but behind closed doors, a chilling story of obsession was quietly unfolding. When Lisa pulled away, hoping for peace, Melanie pulled tighter, desperate for control. The result? A calculated murder that shocked an entire community and left one question echoing long after the verdict was read. How far will someone go when love turns into obsession, and obsession into revenge? In the heart of Oregon, nestled between thick pine forests and endless gray skies, lies the small town of Hazelwood. With a population just under 6,000, it was the kind of place where front doors were rarely locked. Neighbors greeted each other by name, and gossip traveled faster than the local news. Life moved slowly, predictably, and most residents liked it that way. But all of that changed in the fall of 2017, when a quiet morning turned into a nightmare none of them would forget. On October 14th, Lisa Monroe, a 23-year-old animal shelter volunteer, didn't show up for work. At first, no one panicked. Maybe she was sick. Maybe her car wouldn't start. But after 3 unanswered calls and a full day without contact, concern began to grow. Lisa was known for her punctuality, her gentle spirit, and her love for animals. It was unlike her to disappear without a word. The alarm bells really rang when her neighbor, a retired nurse named Carol, noticed Lisa's dog, a golden retriever named Max, barking relentlessly. Lisa's car was still parked in the driveway. Her porch light was still on, and her mailbox was overflowing. Carol contacted the police. Officers arrived just after a.m. the next morning. There were no signs of forced entry. The front door was locked, and the apartment was silent to silent. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Dishes from dinner were still in the sink. A blanket was draped over the couch. But when they reached the bedroom, the scene shifted. Lisa was found lying face up on the floor near her bed, her eyes closed, her skin cold. She was fully dressed, and nothing appeared stolen. There were no obvious injuries, no blood, but a closer look revealed faint bruising around her neck and small abrasions on her wrists. The cause of death was determined to be manual strangulation. As the news spread, shock rippled through Hazelwood. Lisa wasn't involved in anything dangerous. She didn't have enemies. She wasn't in a relationship. People couldn't understand who would want to harm her, or why. The case felt personal. It wasn't random violence. Whoever had done this had known Lisa and had likely been let in. What made things more troubling was what wasn't found. Lisa's phone was missing. So was her personal journal, a leather-bound book she carried everywhere. Her laptop remained on her desk, untouched. There were no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, and no witnesses. The killer had come and gone without leaving a trace, and Hazelwood, for the first time in decades, had a murder on its hands. As investigators dug into Lisa Monroe's life, they encountered a web of seemingly ordinary connections. Friends, co-workers, former classmates all described Lisa as kind, quiet, and deeply caring. She didn't party, she didn't date much, and she avoided conflict. But one name kept surfacing during interviews, like a shadow behind her carefully structured life: Melanie Cross. At first, Melanie appeared to be a footnote, just a former college roommate. But the more police asked, the more they realized Melanie was far from a casual acquaintance. Lisa and Melanie had shared a dorm room during their sophomore year at Western Oregon University. Those who knew them back then said they were inseparable at first. Study sessions turned into late-night talks. They volunteered together, hung out off campus, and even shared social media posts that hinted at a deep personal bond. But by the end of that academic year, something changed. Lisa abruptly requested a room reassignment. She stopped posting about Melanie, and according to her best friend from college, Lisa had started avoiding places she knew Melanie would be. The change hadn't come out of nowhere. Melanie had grown possessive. She would become withdrawn or irritable if Lisa spent time with others. She often showed up unannounced at Lisa's classes or job on campus. At first, Lisa brushed it off as intense friendship, but it escalated. Melanie began writing long letters, some overly affectionate, others angry and cold. One night, she allegedly waited outside Lisa's apartment for hours, refusing to leave until Lisa agreed to talk. After that, Lisa cut ties. After graduation, Lisa returned to Hazelwood and Melanie seemed to disappear from her life, or so it appeared on the surface. But a deeper look revealed that Melanie never really let go. Investigators found old emails, some of them disturbing in tone. One from 6 months before Lisa's death read, "I know you think you're done with me, but I'm not done with you. We're not over." Friend said Lisa never responded, but the messages kept coming. What made everything more unsettling was the discovery of security camera footage from the apartment complex. 2 days before Lisa's body was found, a woman in a hooded jacket entered the building from the back entrance around midnight. The footage wasn't high quality, but investigators noted the figure's height, posture, and gait all matching Melanie's description. The woman left the building just 9 minutes later, using a different exit. Detectives couldn't confirm her identity from the footage alone, but one thing was becoming clear: someone from Lisa's past had resurfaced, and the silence Melanie had maintained for months may have only been a mask, hiding something far darker underneath. Melanie Cross wasn't easy to track down. After college, she had seemingly vanished. No social media presence, no employment records, and no known current address. Investigators combed through state databases, credit card usage, and traffic cameras before finally locating her in a rural town over 60 miles away from Hazelwood. She was living under a different name, working part-time at a roadside diner, and renting a small, isolated cabin deep in the woods. When detectives finally approached her, she appeared calm and cooperative, but something about her demeanor felt carefully measured, almost rehearsed. During the initial questioning, Melanie admitted she had once been close to Lisa. She spoke about their college days with a strange, disconnected warmth, describing Lisa as someone who understood her better than anyone else ever had. When asked directly about Lisa's death, Melanie said she hadn't seen her in months and had no contact since college. But the investigators knew that wasn't true. Cell tower data placed Melanie's phone near Lisa's apartment on the night she was believed to have been killed. That, combined with the suspicious footage from the security camera, painted a different story. A search warrant was issued for Melanie's cabin, and what they found inside was chilling. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her bedroom was a small box filled with Lisa's personal items, things that had been missing from her apartment. Lisa's journal was inside, along with a printed photograph of the two of them from their college years. The photo had been torn straight down the middle, with Lisa's side crumpled and stained. There was also a necklace Lisa was known to wear, which her family had reported missing. The discovery was damning, but the journal was what truly changed the course of the investigation. Lisa had documented months of discomfort, fear, and increasing anxiety over Melanie's behavior. In her final entries, She described how Melanie had been appearing in places she shouldn't have known about at her job, near her gym, even outside her apartment. Lisa wrote that she had blocked Melanie's number, ignored her emails, and hoped the silence would make her go away. It hadn't. The entries painted a clear picture of emotional manipulation and obsession. Lisa wrote about feeling watched, about the fear of being alone, and her regret for not cutting ties sooner. She never seemed to suspect that Melanie would go as far as physical violence, but the growing sense of dread was unmistakable. In the final pages, Lisa wrote a sentence that haunted investigators: "If anything happens to me, someone needs to look into her." Melanie Cross's arrest sent shockwaves through Hazelwood. The idea that someone so quiet, so seemingly reserved, could be capable of cold-blooded murder was hard for many to accept. But the evidence against her was overwhelming. The recovered journal, the stolen items, the security footage, and her proximity to the crime scene all pointed in one direction. As the case moved to trial, the courtroom became the center of attention, not just for the town, but for national media, drawn to the disturbing portrait of obsession and betrayal. The prosecution built a narrative that was difficult to dispute. They argued that Melanie's actions were not spontaneous or emotional, but deliberate and premeditated. She had carefully erased her presence, scrubbing her digital footprint, using a false name, and relocating far from anyone who knew her. She had spent months watching Lisa from a distance, learning her schedule, understanding when she would be most vulnerable. They said Melanie hadn't just lost touch with reality, she had crafted a plan to punish Lisa for walking away. Using the journal entries, the prosecution gave the jury a voice from beyond the grave. Lisa's words painted a picture of growing fear and a final, desperate attempt to move on from someone who wouldn't let her go. Every documented email, every unanswered letter, every incident of stalking was laid bare for the courtroom to hear. What made the case more chilling was Melanie's demeanor. She sat motionless during most of the proceedings, showing no emotion, no sign of regret or sorrow. The defense, however, took a different route. They portrayed Melanie as a woman struggling with deep psychological issues, abandonment trauma, social isolation, and untreated mental illness. They claimed that her connection to Lisa had been her only sense of stability, and that losing it had caused her mental state to deteriorate. They suggested the murder was not premeditated, but the tragic result of an emotional breakdown. They pushed for a lesser charge, arguing diminished capacity. Despite their efforts, the jury was not convinced. The planning, the travel, the hidden items, and the deliberate deletion of digital records all pointed to intent. It didn't look like a sudden snap, it looked like a mission. After just under a day of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Melanie Cross was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the days that followed, Hazelwood tried to come to terms with what had happened. Lisa's family held a memorial that drew hundreds, many of them people she had helped through her work with animals or community outreach. But even amid the tears and candles, one question lingered: how could love, or what masqueraded as it, end in such quiet, deliberate cruelty? In the aftermath of the trial, Hazelwood was left with a wound that would take years to heal. Lisa Monroe had been a symbol of kindness, generosity, and promise, a young woman whose life was just beginning. Her murder left a lasting mark not only on those who knew her, but on the entire community. What had once felt like the safest place in the world now carried an invisible weight. The streets were quieter, locks were double-checked, trust didn't come as easily. A haunting reality had settled in. Darkness can exist even in the people we think we know best, Lisa's story became more than just a tragedy, it became a warning. Local schools, community centers, and organizations began hosting seminars on emotional abuse, stalking, and the dangers of obsession. Mental health awareness initiatives gained momentum, and a scholarship fund was created in Lisa's name to support young women pursuing careers in social work and psychology. Her parents, devastated but determined, used their grief to educate others. They spoke openly about the signs Lisa had missed, the discomfort she had written about, and the importance of listening to those instincts that whisper when something feels off. Meanwhile, Melanie Cross faded into silence behind prison walls. She declined all interviews, refused therapy, and ignored every attempt at communication. She never offered an explanation or apology. Some believed she truly felt nothing. Others thought the truth was even more chilling, that she believed what she did was justified, even necessary. The absence of closure only added to the unsettling nature of the crime. Melanie had loved Lisa in a way that was never truly love. It was control, obsession, and the desperate need to possess someone who had already moved on. As time passed, people began to reflect on the nature of relationships, not just romantic ones, but emotional attachments that blur boundaries. Lisa had tried to be kind, to create space without causing harm, but sometimes kindness is misunderstood. Sometimes silence is mistaken for an invitation, and sometimes walking away is seen not as strength, but as betrayal. In Melanie's eyes, Lisa wasn't a person with her own life and choices. She was an idea that couldn't be let go. Lisa's death wasn't random. It wasn't senseless. It was the end result of obsession left unchecked, of red flags ignored, and of a no that someone refused to accept. Her story remains a painful but necessary reminder that love is never real when it ignores consent. And in the quiet town of Hazelwood, that lesson came at the highest cost.